I'm Coach Mickey, and I'm so glad that you've joined us. And if this is your first time joining us, come on in and make yourself comfortable. And for those of you that join us on a regular basis, I am so glad that you do. And I really do appreciate the fact that many of you reach out to all my guests and to me personally with your comments, your questions, and your suggestions with some of the guests that we've had on. And I really am excited to have Blake back because many of you have reached out to me from when we did the podcast a while ago with Blake in regards to kidney transplants and the upcoming things that are happening. And I'm really touched and honored that Blake's family was willing to come on and be on this podcast to not only share with me, but to also share with many of you what it's like as a family, not only as the person that is going through what Blake has to go through, but how his family's had to go through it and how it affects. And this is going to be really inspiring. So welcome. Thank you so much for everybody to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you for having us again.
Yeah. So Blake, I'm gonna start with you. I know I'm just gonna have you recap real quick on what had transpired just to kind of refresh everybody. Just a quick 30-second thing, and then I'm gonna jump in because I really feel strongly about knowing how this has worked between your parents and then also having the lovely wife that you have. I mean, this is an everyday thing that you have to address.
Yeah, no, I was born with bad kidneys, and at age 5, my mom donated her kidney to me, and it got me through adolescence, which, from everything I understand, that was pretty much the goal. It would have been nicer to go longer, but it got me through adolescence. And then I received my second kidney transplant at UCLA, and I was 20. My dad donated his kidney to me at the time, and my kidney's been going strong, pretty much strong, I should say, ever since. There's been hiccups every once in a while and different things, and it didn't start out smooth. But yeah, it's been going well, and we just started doing the podcast so we can get the UCLA's kidney tolerance program out there so that people can hear about that.
Yeah, and that's pretty exciting. And hopefully we can keep elaborating on that and have you keep coming back to fill us in on what's transpiring. I know that's something that I've gotten quite a few questions about. So I'm going to start with you, Scott, which is Blake's dad. First of all, having a child that needs a kidney. I mean, what was that like, with this child, as a parent when you discovered this?
Gosh, that's a a long answer, but I think part of it, and I'm looking to Karen for nods and input also. It was kind of a process because when Blake's a twin, and so when they were born, he was held back in the hospital in intensive care. They actually discovered he had a pleurisy on his lung. And so they were concerned about that. They brought him, he stayed back. After running some tests, they found there were problems with the kidneys. We didn't know exactly what it was. And I think when he was a couple weeks old, I'm looking to Karen for a nod. We went to USC, and that's the first time we had met Dr. Opass. And, through testing, and that's basically when we found out that the kidneys were insufficient, certainly for his lifetime. I want to say he had less than 15% kidney function at that point. So I think that some of it was probably at that time it kind of sunk in a little bit, but there's just so much that goes on, being new parents of twins, having 3 others at home, and just the blur of doctors. It took a little bit to sink in that, Blake had kidney problems. I'm just trying to, it was hard, but I'm not sure. Sometimes it kind of felt like you didn't have enough time to slow down to really at least early on to really even think about it that much. You had so much to do, so many appointments.
Special formula.
Yeah, yeah, it just seemed like there was early on, different than, 4.5 years later, when Blake had the first transplant. You were just kind of running on adrenaline and getting things done. Yeah.
And Karen, if you wouldn't mind me asking, I mean, if you wouldn't mind, I mean, first of all, as a parent, and I've got children of my own, but the thought of, I mean, you would do anything for your children, but for you as parents, you really had to go to another whole extreme because both of you donated, kidneys, to your child. So how, how did that happen? Because you have other children that you were working with. First of all, I want to say, how remarkable you all are as a family. I mean, this is something that is very intense and serious, but also from the things I'm reading here that Blake sent me, I can't wait to get into some of the fun stuff. But how was that for you, Karen? I mean, because that's a lot to do that. What were your thoughts on that? What were your feelings?
I was kind of overwhelmed. I had his twin sister to take care of, and him. And the first 10 days, he was in the hospital.
You hit some.
Well, she's crying because I'm her favorite child, so it's not the hospital part; it's the favorite.
Well,
part.
It's that I had to leave him at the hospital because I had his sister to take care of, plus his other siblings. We had 3 others, so it was just a lot to process.
She was going down, let's put it. In the first 2-3 weeks, lack of sleep, trying to take care of, the twins, which was new for us, and she was just physically kind of going down. So the first time, I guess, on not really a funny sense, but we had to move Noelle to a formula, and Karen had nursed the other kids, and so now for the first time, I had the night feeding duty with Noelle. So because it was just too much for Karen to try to manage all that. So she took care of everything, and I just took care of a little piece of Noelle.
Yeah. I was very tired, and I knew it when I dressed Blake in a dress. So I said, I think I need some help here. I'm very tired.
Well, I don't know, Karen. I think that's pretty good track record considering what you were going through. So, that one's okay.
Yeah, the fact that I figured it out, that worked out. I didn't take him out of the house that way.
So I know this is such a difficult thing, and I can't even imagine, like I said, going through this. And Blake has been extraordinary coming in and sharing his journey and what's gone on, and that's why I wanted to talk to you as parents. But I'm looking at some of these things the stories that Blake had sent me, and one of them he has on here was. Tell me about McDonald's. I guess apparently something had happened with dialysis. So I want to hear this story.
Well, I think that's probably his. I'm assuming that would be dialysis would be his grandfather. We having to take. I mean, it was challenging, but then Blake, roll forward quite a bit of time. And before the transplant, Blake then went on to hemodialysis at Children's, which required, it was, 3-ish times, 2.5, 3-ish times a week, every couple days. So you had to drive into, it was just by the time everything was done, it was probably a 7-hour-ish day, because you'd have to drive down there. By the time you got there, by the time they got Blake hooked up, he'd be on dialysis for a couple hours, but it took, 40 minutes to an hour to get him hooked up, 40 minutes to an hour to take, to get him off the equipment. And so we were blessed, very blessed in that, we did have family that was able to help. And so Karen would take him, many times I would take him. But a number of times my dad, Blake's grandfather, who they had a great relationship, he would take Blake. And when we just, Karen needed whatever it was, maybe there was something at school that she needed to be there for the other kids, and I couldn't get, it was a tough time for me to get away at work. And so my dad would take him. Well, my dad would take him down to a McDonald's, and they'd eat French fries, which wasn't exactly.
It was
not on the
no for a
yeah,
dialysis
not a dialysis thing, but my dad.
Yeah,
so
no, you can't have that. Too much potassium.
Yeah. So my dad would take them.
Yeah, I'm sure there was probably a lot of dietary restrictions, especially for what you're going through. But I have to ask, and if you wouldn't mind. So, I mean, experiencing and being a kidney donor, I mean, what was the influence and the perspective like on your life and family, and then and your health? Because these are all things that have to be taken into consideration. I mean, usually you go through and you have these structured things that you do, but now you feel this other element of having to be not only with a child that you have to keep healthy based on his kidney function, but also because both of you were kidney donors. So how did that affect your perspective on your family?
I think, and Karen and I, we're talking about this, for us, kind of the overriding top, how did we get through everything all the time? It was just our faith in the Lord, and that he was going to take care of us. A verse that came up for us was in Philippians, and be anxious for nothing, and everything, prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, take your request to the Lord. And that, his peace, that was kind of the overriding principle. And then you just kind of everything else worked its way out from that. Whatever those difficulties were, managing dialysis for Blake, managing when you donate a kidney, there's a pretty extensive testing that you have to go through for them to say, yes, you can donate.
Which you were first.
Basically testing everything. And I was actually, when Blake was that first transplant, I actually went through all of the testing completely. And that's a very long story, but through some things that came up, they found that Karen, literally like 3 months of testing, that Karen may have been a little better donor. And so
that was a week before surgery.
Yeah.
Wow. That's not much time to prepare.
Yeah, that's a whole different issue and story. And so then Karen went through the testing, but I don't think for either of us, that wasn't an issue. Blake needed a kidney. It was more an issue of going through the testing, and are we, was our kidney going to be a good, match for Blake? And it was more looking at that. I don't know that either one of us really spent a lot of time on that. It's what needed to be done. And even prior to that, while I was going through the testing, Blake was put on a transplant list. And we actually were called one time for with a cadaver donor. And it didn't work out. But there's a long process, leading up to that. And then, donating the kidney. Simple, they had told us that as long as you're healthy, which is why they do all of that testing, that you can, live perfectly fine with one kidney. There is very few things that we had to modify in our lifestyle to donate that kidney. Now, in fairness, I guess I can give a quick snapshot of 2 kidney transplants, or Karen did the first one when Blake was 5, which we were just so blessed to have the medical technology there. But Karen had I guess you would say, early, more traditional surgery where she was, incision from the outside. She has, I think, like a 12-inch incision and was in the hospital for a couple weeks. And you can imagine opening yourself up with a 12 to 14-inch incision takes a pretty significant recovery. Then you roll forward, which both Blake and Karen harassed me about. Now you roll forward 15 years. Blake's now 20, and I'm up to bat, per se, to donate the kidney. My surgery technology had come along. My surgery was a laparoscopic surgery. So the entire removal of the kidney, or at least detaching it, per se, and, redoing all the vascular structure and all that was all done laparoscopically. And I just have a little, like a 4-inch incision that they obviously have to get the kidney out. And so that's all I had. Karen was in the hospital, I think, for close to 2 weeks, something like that. I went in on Blake, I think, a Thursday. The surgery started like 6 a.m. I was released.
I don't know if they gave me drugs.
Yeah, I was released at 12 o'clock the following day. So,
wow.
She has a 12-inch scar. They just both harass me and say I've got a wimpy scar.
Yeah. Karen's got a warrior scar.
She has a warrior scar. I have a wimpy scar.
That's right.
So anyway, long response to a simple question.
You guys are both very amazing, and I cannot even imagine how it must have felt, especially as a husband and a father, watching your wife and your son both go into surgery and then to turn it around and do it the other way. Karen, for you to watch your husband and your son go into surgery. I mean, that in itself. But you kind of covered that. You said the hope and your faith and, just having that I think sometimes is what we need to get us through the most challenging times, when we really just don't know what we're doing, what's going to happen.
Yeah. You don't want to get me crying on that one. And I would say, that was our overriding for ourselves and our family. No question about that. That's not to say that there aren't still those difficult things and challenges and anxiety and all that. Blake, as you know a little bit about Blake, he's stubborn, and that's a good thing. He's very determined, and you could use whatever. He comes by that, definitely from his mom and dad. And I distinctly remember, dreading that moment, walking Karen down the hallway as they went through the operating doors and letting go of her. And it was one of those times where really the Lord kind of speaks to you. Now, I'm not saying there was some burning bush in the hallway, but I was by myself at that point, knowing that I've got to get over to my son because Blake's surgery trailed Karen's by about 40 minutes to an hour. But it was one of those, are you going to let go and trust me and to take care of him? I provided amazing doctors, which he had. We were so blessed to have the surgical team and Dr. Opas through the whole point of that. And then just that piece of being able to go and be with Blake as he went into the operating room. But yeah, that's one of those tough things to let go. That's kind of an understatement, but.
Oh, I bet. I mean, I bet just, anything that has to do with your child, it just kind of hits the heartstrings. So what you went through is is a whirlwind of emotions, especially with both of them, going in at the same time. I want to skip ahead a little bit because we're so lucky to have on Terese, Blake's wife. And this is something I got a lot of questions, after Blake did the podcast with me. And I cannot tell you how many of we call them our circle of friends, our listeners, because I've got listeners all over the world. And so many people have followed your story, Blake. And I was, like I said, I'm so appreciative that everybody was able to come on today to kind of give their insight. But Terese, I want to skip ahead a little bit to you. When did you meet Blake, and then how did all this transpire when you found out about his situation?
Yeah, so we met, long story short, we met online, and I think I'm just trying to think back a little bit. I had wanted to be in a serious relationship at the time, so I had sort of asked my best friend at the time, hey, how do I ask this guy, if we go on a date and if it leads to marriage, then it's something serious. If it doesn't, fine. And so I sort of asked my friend, what do you suggest I say? Because I don't want to just keep texting this guy who I'm never going to meet, or it's just, nothing comes of it. So my friend had suggested, well, just send him a text message and tell him, and ask him, say, I don't really date around, and if you're interested, I would like this to be serious and potentially end in marriage. So I wrote him and I said exactly that, and he wrote back and he said, I'm really glad you said that because I'm interested in marriage too. And so then that was before we had even met. And so that's sort of how it all began. And then I think, he had shared with me over just text message about his kidney. And then I don't remember the exact conversation, but I just was sort of, I didn't mind much at the time. It just was what it was. But I think once we had gotten married, because we didn't date long, once we had been married, I think it was more difficult because I think it was probably within 6 months after our big, our wedding day, he had been requested to do chemotherapy again.
Yeah, that was
which
3
was
months.
a round of Rituxan for his chemotherapy, which sort of helps when his kidney disease flares up. That sort of keeps it at bay, the chemotherapy. So it's not that it's cancerous. They just use that as an alternative method. So he had done that, and that was really scary for me because obviously the word chemotherapy and everyone, has such a reaction to it. And then one time I had gone into work still, I remember, and I was just so tired and stressed. And then I was a nanny at the time. So the family had asked me, oh, I told them, I think I need to leave early because I have to pick my husband up from Kaiser because he's doing this, all day infusion, chemotherapy. And they were like, oh my gosh, why didn't you share that with us? You should have taken the day off. And, of course we were newlyweds, so we needed the money. But, the longer we've been married, I've learned, and we've had other, situations health related in our marriage. I think that it sort of helped me learn and just how to navigate it, because I don't think I had a healthy understanding either of just, health complications and how to manage them. Growing up, I was generally healthy, still am, and no one in my family had major health complications. Everyone lived through their 90s. So it was very, very all new to me. Anything health related meant that it was bad in my head. So yeah, I've learned a lot, but it's been a lot of processing and still, has its difficult times, but you just have to move forward with the information you have and sort of just learn what you can do to fix the problem at hand.
Now you have children, and one of the questions that has been brought up, and Blake, I'm glad you wrote this down to address this. How do your children handle some of these health hurdles that you have to go through, because this is like, is this an everyday thing, or is this something that just happens, it's going to transpire like every 2 or 3 months, and either Terese or Blake can answer that.
Yeah. I mean, our kids, they had gone through their fair share. We've adopted them prior to them coming into our home. So I'm pretty sure my medical stuff doesn't even, it pales in comparison to what they have gone through. But kind of how I don't even know, we never had a conversation. It was just, this is how things are. My daughter, Ashley, loves to watch me do my medication, in terms of, I have all my medication out and I put them in their boxes, and that's, it takes about an hour. That's how much medication there is. And she loves to watch it, and she doesn't touch the medicine. She just likes to see, because she's very interested in, wow, why does that? And we've talked about it, and as they gotten older. I can't speak to how they're like when I'm doing chemotherapy, but or it's not even called chemo anymore. It was originally. Now it's just an infusion. I don't. But now we know. Every 13 to 15 months, I will be getting this treatment done, and the kids, I think they're kind of just used to it. They're, okay, Dad's going to go do that, and I think in that their brain is, well, dad can take care of anything, so we don't need to worry. But I know I have had other medical things that have happened, and I had to, stay over the night in the hospital. And our daughter Ashley was didn't handle it very well. She was very, very,
very
worried.
concerned, very empathetic.
She was very concerned, but just the regular everyday kidney stuff and the Rituxan, they seem to be, okay, whatever. But if something big happens, it's that's out in the ordinary. That's when they kind of are, what's going on? Why is Dad? What's going on with that? And because both of the kids are very empathetic, and they get worried, and they get worried, especially when times are off, in terms of, wait, Dad's not home at night, what's going on? Or I'm in school, and it's thrown them off considerably that I'm not home in the morning and the afternoon anymore. So
your whole life has probably changes. I mean, then you throw children into the mix, and but it's their everyday life, so they see it and they understand it, and at least they're willing to be able to come to you and ask the questions and see what's going on. And the fact that you're in tune to what they're feeling and what they're seeing, that's going to help them through the process. I've talked to you multiple times, Blake, and we've had opportunities not only on air but off air. We've conversed, and and now you're telling me, you've told me, and now your dad's saying that you're stubborn, but I got to ask, there's got to be some times, because you said some of these events that you've been through, and some of these situations, one of the things I've discovered is at least you kind of keep your sense of humor through this. So do you have anybody have a story that they want to share that you've had to use as your safety net to get through this?
I mean, I like to play pranks on my nurses at any given time, which is kind of, I'm in school to be a nurse, so that's I'm sure it's going to back at me at some point. But I have no problem. I've done plasmapheresis, and I played pranks on my nurses, and I've had nurses like, actually, okay, I'm not going to be. They don't like the pranks, and I find out later, and I took it too far. But for the most part, I think that most of my stubbornness and my humor just comes from, you can't get through all the medical stuff without having anything funny. Like, you have to have a sense of humor. My doctor, when I was a kid, he thought they have to fill your kidneys and liver and everything. Well, he did it by tickling. Well, I don't like tickling, and I just grabbed his tie and choked him. And that was and so he learned quickly to throw his tie or not have a tie on with me. Dr. Opus learned that. And Dr. Danovich, great. He's amazing. He sees me as probably more of a son than anything at times. I mean, I've been with him for 21 years, and he one time came in and he kind of quickly tapped me on the face, and oh, that was a patient, and we both laughed. I'm the type, I didn't, he doesn't, it didn't, we both laughed. It was not, it was, and he was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that. And I was like, it's fine. Like, like we have a lot of funny moments like that. But I know my parents, they brought one up, and I don't know, I don't remember it, so I can't really tell this story. So I'll let them tell it if they want.
Oh, there's
the nurse slapped me.
I think one of the things when I say stubborn, tough, whatever words you want to use, God created him that way is what got him through this, because so many of the children that we saw over the years became very they kind of meld into the background. You could see them kind of feeling defeated, where Blake was just like a little firecracker all the time. But and that was, I'll tell that quick story on one thing in the hospital. But Blake came home from the hospital after his first transplant, and I think, was it that day or the next day, something like that, went out and learned, the kids were out in front and he's rollerblading, which most people would have had a heart attack.
Never had done that before.
But, that was just Blake. I'm going to go after it. But he was in the hospital with that first transplant, and being at Children's Hospital, it's a teaching hospital. So you have residents. And by this point, at, the young age of 5, which was a good thing, Blake had been poked, prodded, stuck all the time, and had become, even at 5 years old, starting to own or understand some of his medical care. So, he'd tell, he had to give blood all the time. So he would tell his nurses, use such and such size, butterfly needle on, give him on the count of 3 or something. Well, when he was in for his transplant, still in the hospital, post-surgery, there was a resident that came in, and Blake asked her, the doctor, to not touch the incision, that area, because they're wanting to look around and see if there's swelling. But he said, basically it said, you need to let me know. Well, she ignored Blake. And we almost had 2 problems, because she went ahead and touched it, hurt. And Blake also has reflexes that are kind of like, his reflexes are faster than rattlesnakes. Well, he popped her one. So now you have a doctor that's just been punched by a 5-year-old, but he had told her, he warned her very clearly. Well, that was the one thing, but she decided it would be a good idea to kind of pop him back. That was not a good idea with Mama close by. Now you look at it afterwards, and everyone laughed at it, but that was just Blake. I'm going to tell you, you're going to listen to me. And there was reasonable, the things that he asked. And when you didn't, he'd grab your tie, or, you heard him.
I sound very violent, but I'm not violent anymore. I would never harm a doctor.
He wasn't.
I would want to make that clear. At a 5-year-old, I just very different.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can understand that.
Needless to say, that resident never called on him again.
Yeah,
I guess she did. But Karen said she brought him a peace offering, a piece of pizza. She probably steered clear of Mom.
Well, good for you. I'm proud of you, Karen, for standing up. I mean, I would do the same thing if it was my kid. I can't blame you on that. You hurt the cub, mama bear comes out. That's just the way it
Yeah,
is. So that makes
Don't
you a
mess
good
with my
mom.
cub.
So we got about 3 minutes to wrap up or so. I'll give you guys a little bit more, but I'd like to hear from each and every one of you. Is there something you'd like to share or say, either as a parent or as a wife, or what you're going through, that for someone who may be going through this, and just to give them some kind of insight? I mean, so I'm going to start with you, Karen. Is there something you'd like to say as a mom?
Oh, gosh.
Don't get her crying again.
Yeah.
Oh, she's so sweet.
I
And her
just,
favorite.
I just kind of went through it with just, as, I didn't think about it. I just had to do it. And so, but I was very appreciative of when we met Terese, that she was willing to, knowing that someday he may need another transplant, and did have health problems, that she was okay with that. And so, when it's your kid, you want all the best for him. And so,
she was an answer to prayer.
She definitely was, that she
over a lot of years.
I mean, we talked to her right up front about, he had kidney transplant. She goes, well, so we could get married, and 3 weeks later he could have, kidney. We could find out he needed a kidney transplant. That just happened. So,
I remember Blake and I had that conversation. Sort of, he was like, "Well, I mean, I can get in a car accident tomorrow. Anything can happen,
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's just, there's just all sorts of emotions that you go through as a parent, because from birth to, 36.
Something that and I've wanted to share, and I think Karen and I talked about this quickly, because you said, what's some advice you'd give? And really it was advice that was given to us. We were phenomenally blessed with Blake's doctors, and first being Dr. Opass. Sorry. But he gave us some advice early on, and we trusted him, and he earned that trust, because it is your kid. He earned that. A caring, extremely capable doctor, but he cared about us. He cared about Blake, and that, built our trust. But he had shared, and I'd say anyone going through that, and it was a confidence, but not an arrogance by any stretch, was really let me take care of the physical part of Blake, all the things that have to be done, leading up to a transplant, all those things. I need you to take care of Blake, which means I need you and your wife together, because he sees lots of families that this breaks them up. I need Blake to lead a normal as possible life. I can't fix those things, those emotional, mental things. And I think we trusted him. So he did that, and we did the other. And, and I would say, Dr. Danovich did a lot of really the same things. So that was when Blake was older. And so that relationship built. But I think that was important. We did everything we could to make sure that Blake had as normal a childhood as possible. Yeah. Obviously, there were some, most children don't go in for dialysis or transplants, but Blake water skied, Blake backpacked. Blake was not allowed to play football, although he probably would have wanted to. But I mean, that was a big, he tried hard. Yeah, he did wrestle, and he was a heck of a wrestler. So anyway, we probably put time limit. Sorry for that.
No. You're fine. Actually, I want to go. I want to actually have give you quality time because I think what you have to offer is very valuable. And like I said, I've had so many people reach out to me with a lot of these questions, and that you've been so kind to address. As a family, as parents, but also as a family. Terese, what about you? I mean, what's something? I mean, as a wife, as a mom. I mean, and how is that working? I mean, then I'm going to finish up with you, Blake, because I know we got some kind of inspiring things that are coming your way, and I'd like you to be able to finish off with that.
Yeah,
But first, Terese, what are your thoughts? I mean, what have you got to say for insight for anybody that's going through this?
be nice. I know where you are right now.
Wait, what?
You missed it.
Being Blake.
Oh, I think as I've just thinking, I mean, I feel like it sounds cliche, but I feel like knowledge is power. I think a lot of times you want to close your eyes and just, wish that the problem wasn't there. But I think if you really lean into it and just learn, different ways of doing things or how to adjust your home life, just giving yourself grace on the day to day, that every day might look different. And we probably don't have much of a structured household as other families do, just because we don't know. Like sometimes Blake has a rough morning a lot, or, and he's not feeling well, so he gets out of bed later, or, just so many different things. So I think we've just learned to sort of have realistic expectations,
Mm-hmm.
per se.
And so Blake, I'm gonna wrap it up with you. I know
Yeah.
you and I have talked about the tolerance program. We know that is like cutting edge. It's got to be on its way. I know you're just waiting for that. If you can share something about that, you can share about insight, whatever you feel is going to be the most beneficial and that you can offer. I'm going to just let you have the last 5 minutes to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Okay. Yeah. I would be remiss if I didn't tell one quick story about my going in to after surgery and stuff. My siblings, they did a great job at coming in and seeing me and supporting me.
Yes,
Except
absolutely.
one of my siblings did not support me so well because she ran out probably crying because she doesn't like ET, and they had a little red dot on my finger that lit up. And me being the youngest brother, I still to this day will harass my sister Donnell. And the only reason I'm telling this story is because if she listens to this podcast, she knows now. Everybody knows she is not a fan of ET. But the tolerance program, it really is. I've had a lot of conversations with UCLA over the last. I mean, again, I got a call randomly on December 26th from Dr. Beal, and it's snowballed fairly quickly into a podcast with just myself and you, and then I thought, okay, and then we've talked about other podcasts, and now we're doing this one, and we have without giving too much away because we can't yet. I know that you and I had discussed, and we're working on something big, a really, really, really big event that with obviously yourself, Mickey, and UCLA and other. There's going to be a lot. We have great ideas. We have a great marketing team that Terese and I are working with, and UCLA's working with us on a lot of things. But I think that just the fact that there is a program that's out there that needs more attention. That's exciting to be a part of this, especially. But as someone that I always I'll take the medicine, fine. The biggest problem with the medication, besides the side effects, and we just Terese and I have met someone recently that her father-in-law passed away, and he got a kidney transplant, and 10 years later he passed away of cancer that was caused by the immune suppressant drugs, and I mean that's something you don't think about, but it's also one of those, well, I have to take them, either either I do that or I'm on dialysis until I can't do that anymore. So I always was like, oh, I have to take them. But there's also the other side of the coin is sometimes you forget to take your medicine, and so you always have to. I always have a box in the car, whether it's my truck or my car, and I have one in all my binders. So if I go to school and I forget, I have it. But it's planning things out, and that's just part of getting used to being a kidney transplant patient or any transplant patient that's on a drug regimen. But I am excited. I think the tolerance program is going to bring, it can, and I truly believe it will bring a lot of amazing things, not just in the kidney world. I think once the program is finally approved and insurance companies, and I think it can become the gold standard. Dr. Veal and I have talked about that. This is what UCLA, this is what Dr. Veal's desire is, to make this the gold standard of you get your kidney, you get tolerance, and you won't need to get on the immune suppressant drugs because you'll have the tolerance that that has been. I mean, again, the gentleman who did the first kidney transplant with the identical twins, he said the next big frontier is tolerance at his Nobel Prize speech. And I think that's what we're seeing is kind of the next big frontier being tackled in terms of tolerance. So I think I truly do believe it will change medicine. And I know there's also other things that are being researched and for kidneys but I think tolerance is the most practical. I also think it's the most that can become readily available with little controversy, where the other ones are a little more controversial. But yeah, I truly am excited to see what we have down the road as we continue to do more podcasts, and we have this event that we'll be kind of slowly talking about every once in a while, getting people's interest. And I truly believe that if we can, that UCLA is onto something, and what we're doing here can really help out. And it really just comes down to getting the information out, getting people that are family members or have had the kidney transplant to call UCLA, and it's on their website. You call and you ask about tolerance, and you see if you're a candidate. I mean, that's the biggest thing anyone can do right now is just if you need you're interested in the tolerance program, or whether it's I want to help, I want to donate money, whatever it may be, call UCLA's tolerance program. It's on UCLA's website. You just put in kidney tolerance program, and it'll pop right up, and you call, and they'll kind of guide you from there. And Mags, who is probably the one you'll get a hold of, I'm pretty sure secretly running the whole thing, but she's amazing. And like I said last time, she's Dr. Veal's right hand, and she truly is one of the best people I've met at UCLA in a long time.
Well, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank everybody for being here and sharing your stories and your insight. And I know this is not an everyday conversation that most people have, but I do know there's other people out there that are going through this same situation, and to hear it from a full family unit, including, your wife, Terese, to see that there is hope and you can go on and live a normal life and do these incredible things and have a family. I think this is really important and probably very inspiring to quite a few of the people that have reached out to me. So I want to thank you all for that. I'm going to embed the link to UCLA down in the podcast, so everybody can reach out to that. And I know you and I will be talking more, Blake, as we go on this journey. And I really, really hope and I pray every day that you are going to see, this light at the end of the tunnel with this tolerance program, within your lifetime, to be able to have you be part of this, because I know what you've been through and how important this is, not only for you, but for other people. And Karen and Scott, I want to thank you so much. I mean, you're extraordinary parents, extraordinary. And, Yeah, I mean, Karen, wear that tattoo, or not tattoo, wear the scar. I was going to say it's like a tattoo. It's like a battle. It
It
is.
is.
If you think about it, I mean, it is.
Badge of honor.
It's your Viking scar. But it is. I mean, it says something about you, and makes you one of a kind, and that scar, I guess, is like that. It's the same thing, and both of you, Scott, thank you so much. I mean, coming as a perspective as a dad, I mean that really is. I mean, as a dad and a husband. So thank you again for being on. And Terese, thank you. You are an extraordinary person. I mean, we've had an opportunity to connect in multiple ways, but hearing your side of the story too is definitely enlightening and inspiring. You guys are incredible. Thank you so much. I wish all of you the best, with an abundance of health, with whatever you do. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
No,
Vicki,
thank
for
you
having
so
us.
much.
All right, you guys.
Well, thank you.
Oh, you're
Appreciate you taking
welcome.
the time.
You're welcome. All right, you guys, thank you so much for being with us. I will look forward to seeing you again. Please, please, please reach out if you know anybody that would need to hear this podcast or has any questions. I'm going to put the links in for UCLA, if you need to help anybody or even for yourself. I'm sure Blake will be back with me again. We're in touch quite often. So if there's anything or any questions you have, feel free to contact me. I'll be more than happy to pass that on to him or any other information that you may need. But until then, remember, the most courageous thing you can do is be yourself. And until our next podcast, see ya.
This episode was brought to you by KeepOnSharing.com. They're calling themselves the first truly ethical social network. They'll share back 50% of their revenue with their users, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's free to register, and they never sell your information. You can list your products, events, and content for free. Adult content accounts, be gone. They're fun, positive, and encouraging sites supporting local business. In a day and age where social media sites, even well-established ones, are being brought to light left and right for their questionable and sometimes downright archaic business practices, KeepOnSharing.com is a well-needed breath of fresh air. While you can share personal content, news articles, or just about anything for fun and profit, the marketplace allows practically anyone to sell anything at any time from anywhere. But on this site, you are the boss. I cannot express how amazing it is that KeepOnSharing.com shares 50% of all revenue back with the users, on top of having a truly transparent, supportive, and clean business model. Check them out. I'm signing up. Will you? Go ahead and meet me on there. Just go to KeepOnSharing.com. A link will be provided in this episode's description.